Montana Territory, 1887. A harsh winter wind whipped across the open plains as Olivia Vance pressed her hand against the small swell of her stomach, hidden beneath layers of heavy wool. The secret she carried weighed far more than the child growing within her. In the unforgiving landscape of Sweetwater Valley, an unmarried woman with child was considered little better than the tumbleweeds that rolled across the barren landscape, rootless, directionless, and at the mercy of every cruel wind that blew. "You've brought shame on this family," her mother hissed, slamming a tin plate onto the rough-hewn table of their modest homestead. "What do you expect me to tell the neighbors? The church?" Olivia stared at her reflection in the window. At 20 years old, she had once been considered a beauty, with flowing auburn hair that caught fire in the sunset and eyes the color of sage after rain. Now, as winter progressed, so did her waistline, and the whispers in town grew louder with each passing Sunday at church. "Mother, please," Olivia whispered. "I loved him." "Love?" her mother scoffed. "That railroad man who promised to return? He's halfway to California by now, with another fool's daughter on his arm." The truth of her mother's words stung worse than the biting cold. Thomas had promised marriage, promised a life together in San Francisco. Then one morning, the workers' camp was gone, and so was he. "What's done is done," her mother said, wiping rough hands on her apron. "But I won't watch this family name dragged through mud over your foolishness." What Olivia didn't know was that her mother had already devised a solution, one that would remove the evidence of Olivia's indiscretion while securing something the struggling Vance homestead desperately needed. Miles away, Owen Patterson guided his horse across the vast expanse of his newly acquired ranch land. At 26, he stood over 6 feet tall with broad shoulders that seemed custom-made for the demanding work of cattle ranching. The locals had taken to calling him the giant cowboy, though he considered himself of average height among the men in his family back east. His chestnut hair fell in waves across his forehead, and a light stubble dusted his strong jawline after days of riding fence lines. Unlike many who came west seeking fortune or fleeing troubles, Owen had arrived with purpose, to build something that would last, something of his own. "Fine piece of land you got here," his ranch hand, Jeremiah, commented as they surveyed the property from a ridge. "Needs more cattle, though." Owen nodded, eyes scanning the horizon. "That's why I'm heading to the auction in Sweetwater tomorrow. Time to expand the herd before spring." "You need more than cattle to make a home," Jeremiah said, a knowing glint in his weathered eyes. Owen chose not to respond. He'd left behind a broken engagement in Boston, a society arrangement that had felt more like a business transaction than a love match. Out here, with nothing but prairie and possibility stretching before him, he preferred the company of honest horses and predictable cattle to deceptive hearts. What neither Olivia nor Owen realized was how their fates would intertwine the very next day, setting in motion events that would challenge everything they thought they knew about love, dignity, and redemption. Dawn broke cold and clear as Olivia's mother hitched their only wagon. "Get dressed," she ordered, tossing a dress onto Olivia's bed. "The blue one. It's loose enough." "Where are we going?" Olivia asked, confused by the sudden urgency. "To town. The cattle auction." "Mother, I can't. Everyone will see. You'll wear your coat and stay in the wagon," her mother interrupted. "I need you there." The dress, once Olivia's favorite, now barely contained her changing figure. As winter progressed, she had grown increasingly round, her once slender frame transforming with the child within. The townspeople had begun to notice, their glances lingering a moment too long, their conversations halting when she approached. At the auction grounds, Olivia huddled in the wagon, hat pulled low, while her mother disappeared into the crowd. From her vantage point, she could see the cattle pens and the gathering ranchers, rough men with sun-lined faces and calloused hands. One man stood out among them, taller than most, with a gentle way about him despite his imposing stature. He moved with purpose, studying the cattle with a practiced eye, occasionally making notes in a small leather book. "That's Owen Patterson," a woman nearby gossiped to her companion. "Bought the old Miller place last fall. Bachelor, they say, from money back east." "Handsome one," her friend replied. "Wonder why he's alone." Olivia couldn't help but agree with their assessment. There was something compelling about him, not just his physical appearance, but a quiet dignity that seemed rare in these parts. Her observations were interrupted by her mother's return, accompanied by the tall rancher himself. "This is my daughter," her mother said, voice unnaturally bright. "Olivia, meet Mr. Patterson." Owen removed his hat, revealing those chestnut waves Olivia had noticed earlier. His eyes, a deep blue that reminded her of summer skies, widened slightly as they took in her face. "Miss Vance," he said, his voice deeper than she expected, with traces of an Eastern education. "A pleasure." The moment stretched between them, an unspoken recognition passing between two souls who somehow understood loneliness in a crowded room. "Mr. Patterson has invited us to his ranch," her mother announced, "to discuss a business proposition." Olivia's confusion must have shown on her face, because Owen quickly added, "I have a Jersey cow. Prize bloodline. Your mother mentioned you keep a small dairy operation." "We did," Olivia said carefully, "before father passed." Something in Owen's expression shifted, a flicker of compassion, perhaps understanding. "I'm sorry for your loss." Her mother cleared her throat impatiently. "Shall we proceed then?" As they traveled the road to Owen's ranch, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this business proposition than a simple cow trade. Her mother sat rigid beside her, avoiding her questioning glances, while Owen rode alongside, occasionally pointing out landmarks or sharing bits of local history. His ranch house appeared on the horizon, modest compared to the grand Eastern homes she imagined he'd known, but substantial by frontier standards. A broad porch wrapped around the front, and smoke curled invitingly from the stone chimney. "It's not finished yet," Owen explained as he helped Olivia down from the wagon, his hands strong but surprisingly gentle. "I have plans for an addition come spring." Inside, a middle-aged woman bustled about the kitchen. "Mrs. Cooper, my housekeeper," Owen explained, "makes the best biscuits west of the Mississippi." The woman smiled warmly at Olivia before shooting a curious glance at her mother. "I've prepared tea in the parlor, Mr. Patterson." The parlor was simply furnished but comfortable, with bookshelves lining one wall, a rarity in these parts that immediately raised Owen in Olivia's estimation. "Now then," her mother began once they were seated, "about our arrangement." Owen's brow furrowed. "Perhaps Miss Vance would like to see the cow first? She's in the barn." "There's no need to pretend, Mr. Patterson," her mother said sharply. "We both know what's being discussed here." Olivia looked between them, confusion giving way to dawning horror. "Mother, what have you done?" "Securing your future, girl. And ours." Her mother turned to Owen. "She's carrying, as I mentioned. 5 months along, I'd wager. But she's young, strong, can work, can bear more children." The blood drained from Olivia's face as understanding crashed over her. Her mother was trading her like livestock, like the cattle in those auction pens. Owen's expression hardened. "Mrs. Vance, when you approached me about a possible arrangement involving your daughter, I assumed you meant a proper courtship." "Courtship?" her mother scoffed. "Who would court a girl in her condition? I'm offering you a wife without the bother of wooing. She'll run your household, warm your bed. All I ask is that Jersey cow and your word you'll give her child your name." Olivia stood abruptly, knocking over her teacup. "I am not yours to trade, mother. Not for a cow, not for anything." The silence that followed was broken only by the ticking of the mantel clock. Then Owen rose, his height even more impressive as he stood to his full stature. "Mrs. Vance," he said, his voice controlled but cold, "I believe it's time for you to leave." "Without my daughter?" "I think not." "That," Owen replied, "will be Miss Vance's decision." Olivia's heart pounded. A choice was being offered, but what choice was it really? Return to a home where she was seen as nothing but a burden and a shame, or stay with this stranger who, however decent he seemed, had been willing to consider such an arrangement? "I need a moment," she whispered, and fled to the porch, gulping the cold air as if she'd been drowning. Behind her, she could hear the low murmur of continued conversation, her mother's voice rising occasionally in protest. The sun was beginning its descent, painting the prairie gold and amber. In the distance, cattle grazed peacefully, unaware of human dramas. The door opened, and Owen stepped out, keeping a respectful distance. "I apologize," he said quietly. "Had I known your mother's true intentions, I would never have agreed to the meeting." Olivia wiped away a tear. "What did she tell you exactly?" "That her widowed daughter needed a fresh start. That you were—" He hesitated. "Increasing in figure due to your condition, and facing unkindness in town. He sighed. She suggested a marriage of convenience might benefit us both. You would gain protection and legitimacy for your child. I would gain a wife to help establish my home. And the cow? Olivia couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. A flash of anger crossed his face. That was her suggestion. That I sweeten the deal since you were. He stopped abruptly. Damaged goods? Olivia finished for him. Those weren't my words, he said firmly. Nor would they ever be. Something in his tone made her look up, really look at him for the first time. There was no judgment in those blue eyes, only concern. What will you do now? He asked. It was the question she'd been asking herself for months, since the morning sickness first confirmed what she'd feared. What could she do? An unmarried mother had few options in this territory. Domestic service was closed to her. Respectable households wouldn't employ a woman of questionable virtue. Teaching was out of the question. I don't know, she admitted. Owen leaned against the porch rail, considering. I have a proposition. A real one, not whatever scheme your mother concocted. Olivia tensed, wary of more propositions. My housekeeper, Mrs. Cooper, has been saying she needs help, especially with spring coming. The position includes room and board. Private quarters. He gestured to a small cabin visible from the porch. When your time comes, she's skilled as a midwife. Afterward, you can stay on as long as you wish. Why would you do this? You don't know me. I know what it's like to be judged for circumstances beyond your control, he said simply. My father lost everything in bad investments. Society friends disappeared overnight. Out here, a person is measured by their character, not their past. From inside, her mother's voice rose in frustration. I'm not leaving without her. Olivia flinched, and Owen's expression hardened. Unless you wish to return with her, she won't be taking you anywhere. The offer hung between them. Not marriage, not impropriety, but something far more precious. Dignity. Choice. I'll stay, Olivia said, the words feeling like the first honest ones she'd spoken in months. As your housekeeper's assistant. Nothing more. Owen nodded, respecting the boundaries she'd drawn. I'll inform your mother. What followed was a scene Olivia would remember for years to come. Her mother, furious at having her plan thwarted, threatened, and cajoled by turns. Owen, immovable as the mountains on the horizon, insisting that Olivia was welcome to stay as an employee, with all the respect due her position. Fine, her mother finally spat. Keep the girl. But don't come crying to me when that bastard child brings trouble to your door. Owen's voice was steel. Mrs. Vance, I think it's time you left my property. As her mother's wagon disappeared down the long drive, Olivia felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Small and fragile as a prairie flower, but hope nonetheless. Mrs. Cooper appeared beside her, practical and kind. Let's get you settled, dear. Supper's nearly ready, and you're eating for two now. The days that followed established a new rhythm for Olivia. She rose early, helping Mrs. Cooper prepare breakfast before Owen and the ranch hands came in from morning chores. The work was steady but not overwhelming, and Mrs. Cooper proved to be both a patient teacher and a discreet confidant. Owen himself maintained a respectful distance. He was unfailingly polite at meals, occasionally sharing news from town or discussing books when he discovered Olivia's love of reading. But he never presumed, never crossed the line between employer and employee. He's a good man, Mrs. Cooper confided one evening as they prepared supper. Not like some who come west to escape their pasts. He came to build something. You've known him long? Olivia asked, trying to sound merely conversational. Since he arrived last year. I was housekeeper for old Mr. Miller before he passed. Mr. Patterson asked me to stay on. She glanced at Olivia. He never mentioned your condition, you know? Just said you needed work and a safe place. Olivia's hands stilled on the dough she was kneading. He didn't tell you? Didn't have to. I've brought enough babies into this world to recognize the signs. The older woman smiled. Don't worry. Your secret's safe, though it won't be secret much longer. As if on cue, the baby kicked, a strong flutter that still surprised Olivia each time. Her hands moved to her rounded belly, now impossible to conceal. Does the father know? Mrs. Cooper asked gently. Olivia shook her head. He was gone before I knew myself. His loss, the housekeeper said firmly. Any man worth his salt would stand by his responsibilities. Later that night, unable to sleep as the baby practiced what felt like acrobatics beneath her ribs, Olivia wandered to the main house. A lamp still burned in the study, and she found Owen there, poring over ledgers. He looked up at her soft knock, surprise giving way to concern. "Miss Vance, is everything all right?" "Couldn't sleep," she explained, suddenly self-conscious. Her night-dress and robe, while modest, felt intimate in the late-hour quiet. "I saw the light. Just reviewing the accounts." He closed the ledger. "Would you like some tea?" Mrs. Cooper always leaves a kettle ready. As he prepared the tea with surprising competence for a bachelor rancher, Olivia's curiosity got the better of her. "Mrs. Cooper mentioned you came west to build something. What brought you to Montana Territory specifically?" Owen handed her a steaming cup before answering. "My grandfather once passed through these lands as a young man." The stories he told. "I grew up dreaming of mountains that touched the sky and prairies that stretched forever." A smile touched his lips. When Boston became complicated, those dreams resurfaced. Complicated. A shadow crossed his face. "I was engaged. A society match, arranged more by our fathers than by any affection between us." He took a sip of tea. "I discovered she had other attachments. One she intended to maintain after our marriage." "I'm sorry," Olivia said, genuinely sympathetic. "Don't be. It was a fortunate escape." He studied her over the rim of his cup. "And you? Before, circumstances brought you here. What were your dreams?" The question startled her. No one had asked about her dreams in so long. "I wanted to teach," she admitted. "I had nearly saved enough for teacher's college when father fell ill. Then the medical bills." She shrugged. "Dreams change, I suppose." "They adapt," Owen corrected gently. "But they needn't disappear entirely." Something about the quiet night and the warm tea loosened Olivia's carefully guarded emotions. "This child has changed everything. I don't regret it. How could I? But I fear for its future. What kind of life can I provide?" Owen was silent a moment, considering. "When I was a boy, my favorite horse was born to a mare no one valued. A workhorse, plain as dirt. But that colt grew into the finest riding horse on my father's estate." He met her eyes. "Beginnings don't determine endings, Miss Vance." The simple wisdom of his words settled around her like a warm blanket. They talked long into the night, about books, about the ranch's prospects, about the changing territory around them. Never once did Olivia feel judged for her condition or her past. As winter deepened, so did their friendship. Olivia found herself looking forward to those evening conversations, which became something of a ritual. Owen would work late. She would appear with some small pretext, a book recommendation, a question about the next day's work, and they would talk, sometimes for hours. In town, however, the situation was different. On her first trip to purchase supplies with Mrs. Cooper, Olivia felt the stares, heard the whispers. "That's the Vance girl," someone murmured. "Living out at Patterson's ranch now. Wonder what services she's providing." Mrs. Cooper bristled. "Pay them no mind, dear. Small minds traffic in small thoughts." But the rumors reached Owen too. The next Sunday, he appeared at breakfast dressed for church. "Would you care to accompany me to services, Miss Vance?" he asked. "Mrs. Cooper has already begged off with her rheumatism." Olivia froze, panic rising. "I couldn't possibly." "Because of the gossip?" His expression was understanding but determined. "All the more reason to go, unless you're unwell." "I'm perfectly well, but then we'll present ourselves as we are, employer and employee, both with the right to worship without scrutiny." The simple logic of it, and the unexpected ally he offered himself as, left Olivia speechless. An hour later, she found herself seated beside Owen in the small church, acutely aware of the curious glances and whispered comments. The pastor's sermon, ironically, centered on judgment and mercy. Throughout, Owen sat tall beside her, his presence a bulwark against the sea of speculation surrounding them. Afterward, as congregants mingled outside, Olivia heard her mother's voice before she saw her. "Well, if it isn't the happy couple," she said loudly enough for nearby churchgoers to hear. "Tell me, daughter, has he made an honest woman of you yet, or are you still earning your keep in other ways?" The crowd fell silent. Olivia felt the blood drain from her face, her hand instinctively moving to her stomach, now prominent even beneath her winter coat. Before she could respond, Owen stepped forward. "Mrs. Vance," he said, his voice carrying clearly in the hushed churchyard. "Miss Vance is employed as my housekeeper's assistant. She performs her duties admirably and is compensated fairly." His eyes hardened. Any suggestion to the contrary reflects poorly not on her character, but on that of the speaker. A murmur ran through the crowd. Olivia's mother flushed with anger. You defend her now, but what about when the child comes? Will you claim that too, Mr. Patterson? Or admit she came to you already carrying another man's bastard? Olivia felt rather than saw Owen tense beside her. The cruel words hung in the air like icicles, sharp, cold, and dangerous. The circumstances of Miss Vance's child are not for public discussion, Owen replied, his controlled tone belying the anger Olivia sensed beneath. But I will say this. Any child born on my ranch, under my protection, will be treated with the same respect I expect for Miss Vance herself. He offered Olivia his arm. Shall we return home? The word home resonated in Olivia's heart as she placed her hand on his sleeve. Together they walked to his wagon, the whispers following them like autumn leaves in a breeze. I apologize for my mother, Olivia said once they were on the road. She's always been difficult, but since father died, there's a bitterness in her I don't recognize. Owen guided the horses expertly. Grief affects people differently. Some turn inward, some lash out. He glanced at her. What she said about the child. It changes nothing regarding your position at the ranch. Thank you, Olivia whispered, genuinely moved by his steadfastness. That night, as she prepared for bed, a knock came at her cabin door. Mrs. Cooper stood there, a concerned expression on her weathered face. I heard about church, she said. Town's talking of nothing else. Olivia sighed. Of course they are. It's not all bad talk, Mrs. Cooper surprised her by saying. Some are saying it shows Mr. Patterson's Christian charity. Others, she hesitated. Others are wondering if there's more between you than employment. The housekeeper studied Olivia's face. Is there, child? No, Olivia answered quickly, perhaps too quickly. Mr. Patterson has been nothing but proper and kind. Mrs. Cooper nodded, seemingly satisfied. Well, proper and kind is a solid foundation, whatever comes of it. She patted Olivia's hand. Rest well. The baby needs it. As January gave way to February, Olivia's condition became increasingly pronounced. The baby was active, especially at night, leaving her exhausted during the day. Owen noticed her fatigue and lightened her duties without comment, often finding indoor tasks for her when the weather turned brutal. One evening, as a blizzard howled outside, Olivia found herself alone in the main house. Mrs. Cooper had gone to bed early with a cold, and Owen was still in the barn, tending to a mare about to foal. The back door burst open, bringing a swirl of snow and a frost-covered Owen. It's a colt, he announced, stamping snow from his boots. Healthy and strong. Congratulations, Olivia smiled, helping him out of his ice-crusted coat. Is the mare well? Doing fine. One of the hands is staying with them tonight. He rubbed his hands together for warmth. Something smells wonderful. Stew, Olivia explained. Mrs. Cooper prepared it before retiring. They ate together in comfortable silence, the storm creating a cocoon of isolation around the warm kitchen. Afterward, Owen surprised her by clearing the dishes himself. You should rest, he insisted when she tried to help. You look tired. I am, Olivia admitted. The baby is most active when I'm trying to sleep. A look of genuine curiosity crossed Owen's face. May I? He asked hesitantly, gesturing toward her belly. The request was improper by any social standard, yet in that moment, it felt entirely natural. Olivia nodded, taking his hand and placing it where the baby was currently performing what felt like somersaults. Owen's eyes widened as he felt the strong movements. That's remarkable, he breathed, a sense of wonder transforming his features. For a heartbeat, they remained connected, his hand on her belly, her hand on his, the child moving beneath their touch. Something shifted between them in that moment, something neither could quite name. The baby delivered a particularly strong kick, and Olivia winced. Does it hurt? Owen asked, immediately concerned. Not hurt exactly. It's just intense sometimes. She smiled ruefully. The midwife in town says I'm carrying a future cattle driver, with kicks this strong. Owen's hand lingered a moment longer before he reluctantly withdrew it. You should rest, he repeated, but his voice had changed, grown softer. That night, lying in her bed listening to the storm, Olivia faced a truth she'd been avoiding. She was falling in love with Owen Patterson, not with gratitude or dependency, but with genuine affection for the man himself, his quiet strength, his unexpected gentleness, his unwavering integrity. It was impossible, of course. She was his employee, pregnant with another man's child, her reputation in tatters. He was a respected rancher establishing himself in the community. What future could there possibly be? The storm lasted 3 days, effectively cutting the ranch off from town. During that time, a new intimacy developed between them. With Mrs. Cooper still ailing, Olivia took over more household duties, and Owen spent more time indoors, making repairs he'd postponed and catching up on correspondence. They fell into a rhythm that felt disconcertingly natural, sharing meals, discussing books, sometimes simply sitting companionably by the fire. Once, Olivia caught him watching her as she mended a shirt, an expression in his eyes she couldn't decipher, but that made her pulse quicken. When the storm finally broke, Owen announced he needed to ride into town for supplies and mail. "Is there anything you need?" he asked Olivia. She hesitated. "Actually, if you wouldn't mind, I ordered fabric for the baby. It might have arrived at the mercantile." "Of course." He paused, then added, "You haven't prepared much for the child." It wasn't a criticism, merely an observation, but Olivia felt defensive nonetheless. "I've been setting aside what I can from my wages." Owen looked troubled. "Miss Vance, Olivia, you know that any needs for the child will be provided for." "I can't accept charity," she said firmly. "It isn't charity to ensure a child born on my property has what it needs." He met her eyes directly. "I would do the same for any of my workers and their families." The reminder of her position, just one of his workers, stung more than it should have. "Thank you," she said stiffly, "but I prefer to provide for my child myself." Something like frustration crossed Owen's face, but he nodded and departed without further argument. He returned late that afternoon with not only the fabric Olivia had ordered, but also a small wooden cradle. "Mrs. Cooper mentioned you had nowhere for the baby to sleep," he explained as one of the hands carried it into Olivia's cabin. "This belonged to the Millers. It was in the attic." Olivia ran her hand over the smooth wood, worn by generations of babies. "It's beautiful. Thank you. There's something else." Owen seemed uncharacteristically nervous. "A letter came for you." Olivia took the envelope, surprised. Who would write to her here? The handwriting was unfamiliar. "I'll leave you to read in privacy," Owen said, but Olivia caught his sleeve. "Stay, please." She opened the letter with trembling fingers, reading aloud. "Miss Vance, you don't know me, but I was acquainted with Thomas Reynolds during his time working on the Northern Pacific Extension. Before his death in a construction accident last November, he spoke often of a young lady in Sweetwater Valley. I believe you may be that lady. If so, you should know that Thomas intended to return for you. He had purchased tickets to San Francisco and was planning to travel to Sweetwater when the accident occurred. Among his effects was a letter addressed to you, which I've enclosed. With sincere condolences, Edward Simmons, foreman." Olivia's voice faltered as she removed a second, smaller envelope from the first. This handwriting she recognized immediately. "He's dead," she whispered, the reality washing over her. "All this time, I thought he'd abandoned us, but he was dead." Owen's hand found her shoulder, steadying her. "Would you like me to leave?" Olivia shook her head, drawing strength from his presence as she opened Thomas's letter with unsteady hands. "My dearest Olivia," she read, "by the time you read this, I will have arrived in Sweetwater to claim you as my bride. The delay has been torturous, but necessary. I needed to secure proper lodgings and employment in San Francisco before sending for you. All is now arranged. Pack only what you treasure most. We will build our new life with new things. I count the days until we are reunited. With deepest affection, Thomas." Tears blurred Olivia's vision. "He didn't abandon us," she repeated, one hand moving to her belly. "He was coming back." Owen's expression was unreadable. "I'm truly sorry for your loss," he said formally. "If you need time—" "No," Olivia interrupted, wiping her eyes. "No, I needed to know, but—" She looked up at him, struggling to articulate the complicated emotions swirling within her. "Thomas was kind. He had dreams. In another life, we might have been happy. But that life ended months ago." She folded the letter carefully. "My child will know that its father intended to do right by us. That's something. But we must live in the present, not in what might have been." Owen studied her face, seeming to search for something. "And what does the present hold for you, Olivia Vance?" It was a loaded question, one that hung between them like the moment before a lightning strike. Olivia met his gaze directly. "That depends," she said softly, "on what's being offered." The air between them charged with unspoken possibilities. Owen took a step closer. "I don't make offers lightly," he said, his voice low. "Especially not to someone in your position." "My position?" Olivia tensed. "Vulnerable. Dependent on employment. Expecting a child." His eyes never left hers. "I won't take advantage of that." Understanding dawned. He was acknowledging the power imbalance between them, refusing to exploit it. It only made Olivia respect him more. "What if," she ventured carefully, "I were to tell you that any feelings I might have developed exist independently of my gratitude? That they're based on knowing you, not on what you've done for me?" A flicker of something, hope, crossed Owen's face. "I would say such feelings would need time to be certain they're genuine. On both sides." It wasn't a rejection, Olivia realized. It was caution, respect. And after sufficient time, the corner of Owen's mouth lifted in a gentle half-smile. "After sufficient time, I would hope we might have this conversation again. Under different circumstances." The promise in those words warmed Olivia from within. "I look forward to it," she said simply. The weeks that followed brought a subtle shift in their relationship. Nothing improper occurred. Owen was too honorable, and Olivia's condition too advanced. But there was a new awareness between them, an unspoken acknowledgement of possibilities. March arrived with the first hints of spring and the imminent arrival of Olivia's child. Mrs. Cooper prepared the small room off the kitchen for the birth, stocking it with clean linens and the necessary supplies. "Won't be long now," she told Olivia one morning. "The baby's dropped. Could be any day." Olivia nodded, both terrified and eager. The past few nights had been uncomfortable, with persistent backaches and practice contractions that left her restless. That evening, as she sat on the porch watching the sunset, Owen joined her, offering a shawl against the lingering chill. "Mrs. Cooper thinks it will be soon," Olivia said as he settled beside her. Owen nodded. "She sent one of the hands to fetch the midwife from town to stay with us for a few days, just in case." The thoughtfulness of this arrangement touched Olivia deeply. "Thank you. For everything." "There's no need." "There is," she insisted. "What you've done, what you continue to do. It's extraordinary, Owen." It was the first time she'd used his given name, and they both felt the significance of it. He turned to face her fully. "Olivia," he began, then stopped as her face contorted in pain. "What is it?" She gripped the arm of the chair, breathing through the contraction. "I think," she managed when it passed, "that soon might be now." What followed was a blur of activity. Mrs. Cooper took charge immediately, helping Olivia to the prepared room while sending Owen to heat water and check on the midwife's progress. "First babies usually take their time," Mrs. Cooper assured her. "The midwife will likely be here well before things get serious." But Olivia's baby had other ideas. By nightfall, the contractions were coming regularly and intensifying. The midwife had not arrived. Snowmelts flooded the creek crossing, one of the ranch hands reported. "They're waiting for it to recede enough to cross safely." Mrs. Cooper nodded grimly. "Then we proceed without her. I've delivered plenty of babies in my time." Outside the room, Owen paced anxiously, wincing at each cry from within. When Mrs. Cooper emerged to fetch more hot water, he stopped her. "Is she all right?" "She's strong," the housekeeper assured him. "But it's a difficult labor." The baby's positioned awkwardly. As the night wore on, Olivia's strength began to flag. The pain was relentless, washing over her in waves that left her gasping and weak. "I can't," she whispered to Mrs. Cooper after a particularly brutal contraction. "I can't do this." "You can and you will," the older woman said firmly. "That child needs you to be strong just a little longer." In her delirium of pain and exhaustion, Olivia called out for Owen. To her surprise, the door opened, and he was there, his face pale with concern. "You shouldn't be here," Mrs. Cooper protested. "I need to be," he replied, moving to Olivia's side. He took her hand, seeming not to care that she clutched it with bruising force as another contraction seized her. "Owen," she gasped. "If something happens to me, nothing will happen," he said with a conviction that brooked no argument. "You're going to bring this child into the world, and you're going to watch it grow." His certainty gave her strength. When Mrs. Cooper instructed her to push, Olivia bore down with renewed determination, drawing courage from Owen's steady presence. Dawn was breaking when a lusty cry finally filled the room. A girl, Mrs. Cooper announced triumphantly. A beautiful, healthy girl. Tears streamed down Olivia's face as the tiny, red-faced infant was placed on her chest. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "We've been waiting for you." She looked up to find Owen watching them, an expression of wonder and something deeper, something that made her heart race, in his eyes. "She's perfect," he said softly. Mrs. Cooper cleared her throat. "Mr. Patterson, perhaps you could wait outside while I help Miss Vance and the baby get cleaned up?" He nodded, reluctantly releasing Olivia's hand. "I'll be just outside if you need anything." Anything at all. Exhausted but euphoric, Olivia looked down at her daughter's tiny face. "What do you think of Hope?" she asked Mrs. Cooper. "Hope Vance." The housekeeper smiled. A fine name for a new beginning. Later that day, settled in her cabin with Hope sleeping peacefully in the wooden cradle, Olivia received another visit from Owen. He knocked softly, entering when she called permission. "How are you feeling?" he asked, his eyes moving from Olivia to the cradle and back. "Tired. Sore. Happier than I've ever been." She smiled. "Would you like to hold her?" Owen hesitated only briefly before nodding. With careful movements, Olivia lifted the sleeping infant and placed her in his arms, showing him how to support her head. The sight of Owen, tall, strong, capable Owen, cradling her tiny daughter with such gentle reverence made Olivia's heart constrict with emotion. "I've been thinking," he said after a long moment, his eyes still on Hope's face. "About our conversation before. About sufficient time." Olivia's pulse quickened. "Yes. I know it's too soon. You've just given birth. You need time to recover, to adjust to motherhood." He finally looked up, meeting her gaze directly. "But I want you to know that my feelings haven't changed. If anything, they've only grown stronger." "As have mine," Olivia whispered. "Then, when you're ready, truly ready, I'd like to court you properly." He smiled slightly. No cows involved in the transaction. The reference to her mother's shameful proposition made Olivia wince, but she appreciated his attempt to reclaim the narrative. "I'd like that," she said simply. Hope chose that moment to wake, her tiny face scrunching in preparation for a cry. Owen looked momentarily panicked before carefully returning her to Olivia's arms. "I should go," he said, watching as Olivia soothed the infant. "You both need rest." As spring blossomed across the ranch, so did the tentative romance between Olivia and Owen. True to his word, he courted her with patient respect, bringing wildflowers when he returned from riding the range, reading aloud to her and Hope in the evenings, gradually introducing her to the workings of the ranch as she recovered her strength. The gossip in town gradually shifted. The arrival of the baby and Owen's clear affection for both mother and child transformed the narrative from scandal to romance. Olivia's mother, perhaps sensing the changing tide of public opinion, attempted reconciliation, arriving at the ranch one Sunday after church. "I've come to see my granddaughter," she announced stiffly when Olivia answered her cabin door. Olivia hesitated, then stepped back. "Come in, mother." The older woman entered, her eyes immediately finding the cradle where Hope slept. Something softened in her expression as she gazed at the infant. "She looks like you did," she said quietly, "when you were born." Olivia watched warily as her mother approached the cradle. "Her name is Hope." "Hope," her mother repeated. She turned to face Olivia. "I've not been. I've made mistakes." It was as close to an apology as Olivia had ever heard from her. "Yes, you have. The things I said, the way I treated you." Her mother faltered. "After your father died, I was afraid. The farm was failing. I saw no future for either of us. So you tried to trade me for a cow," Olivia said, unable to keep the hurt from her voice. Her mother had the grace to look ashamed. "It was wrong. I see that now." She glanced toward the main house, visible through the window. "He's a good man, your Mr. Patterson. Better than I gave him credit for." "He's not my Mr. Patterson," Olivia corrected automatically. Her mother raised an eyebrow. "No? The whole town thinks otherwise." Before Olivia could respond, a soft knock came at the door. Owen stood there, surprise registering on his face at the sight of Mrs. Vance. "I apologize for interrupting," he said formally. "I can return later." "No need," Olivia's mother said, reaching for her shawl. "I was just leaving." She paused beside Owen. "You take good care of them," she said, a command rather than a request. "I intend to," he replied evenly. "If they'll allow it." After her mother's departure, Olivia sighed. That was unexpected. Owen moved to stand beside her at the cradle, looking down at the sleeping Hope. People can surprise you, he observed. Sometimes even themselves. Their arms brushed, a casual touch that sent awareness shimmering through Olivia. 3 months had passed since Hope's birth. 3 months of careful courtship, of growing affection, of building trust. I've been thinking, Owen said, breaking the comfortable silence. The ranch is doing well. The spring calving was successful. The new grazing land I purchased is proving valuable. Olivia smiled. That's wonderful. Yes, but... He turned to face her fully. Success means little without someone to share it with. Her heart began to race as she recognized the seriousness in his expression. Owen, I love you, Olivia Vance, he said simply. I love your strength, your kindness, your determination. I love the mother you are to Hope. I love the woman you've become since arriving here. He took her hands in his. I want to build a life with you. Both of you. Joy welled up within her, so intense it brought tears to her eyes. Are you certain? Hope isn't. Hope is a blessing. Owen interrupted gently. A child I would be honored to raise as my own, if you'd allow it. Olivia searched his face, finding nothing but sincerity and love. I love you too, she whispered. More than I thought possible. His smile illuminated his features. Then, Olivia Vance, will you marry me? Not as a transaction, not out of necessity, but because we choose each other, freely and completely. Yes, she answered without hesitation. Yes, Owen Patterson, I will marry you. He drew her into his arms, his kiss a promise of the future they would build together. Their wedding took place in July, a simple ceremony in the ranch's flower-strewn meadow. Mrs. Cooper stood as Olivia's witness, beaming with approval. Several ranch hands and their families attended, along with a few townspeople who had shown kindness rather than judgment. To Olivia's surprise, her mother appeared just before the ceremony began. I wasn't sure I'd be welcome, she said hesitantly. You're Hope's grandmother, Olivia replied. That means something, despite everything. As Owen and Olivia exchanged vows beneath the vast Montana sky, 4-month-old Hope watched from Mrs. Cooper's arms, her tiny face solemn, as if understanding the significance of the moment. I take you, Olivia, as my wife. Owen's voice carried clearly in the summer air. I promise to cherish you and Hope as my family, to build our home on a foundation of respect and love, to walk beside you through whatever challenges life brings. Olivia's response came from the depths of her heart. I take you, Owen, as my husband. I promise to partner with you in all things, to nurture the love that has grown between us, to create a home where trust and understanding always dwell. The celebration afterward was joyful but modest. A feast prepared by Mrs. Cooper, music from a ranch hand's fiddle, dancing beneath lantern light as the sun set behind the mountains. As Olivia and Owen swayed together in their first dance as husband and wife, she reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. A year ago, I thought my life was over, she murmured against his shoulder. Now it feels like it's just beginning. Owen's arms tightened around her. It is, he agreed. For all of us. Later that night, after the guests had departed and Hope was sleeping peacefully in what was now the family cabin, Olivia and Owen stood on the porch, gazing at the star-filled sky. I never thought to ask, Olivia said suddenly. Whatever happened to that Jersey cow my mother was so determined to acquire? Owen laughed, the sound warm in the night air. She's in the north pasture. Produced the finest calf this spring I've ever seen. So in a way, my mother did trade me for a cow, Olivia mused, finding she could now see humor in what had once been humiliation. No, Owen said firmly, turning her to face him. Your mother tried to arrange a transaction neither of us wanted. What we found instead was something far more valuable. He traced her cheek with gentle fingers. We found each other. We built this love ourselves, choice by choice, day by day. As his lips met hers, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that this was where she belonged, not as a shameful secret to be hidden away, not as a transaction to solve a problem, but as a woman fully seen and wholly loved. In the quiet Montana night, beneath a canopy of stars, Owen and Olivia Patterson stood together at the threshold of their future, a future built on mutual respect, genuine affection, and the family they had chosen to create. And somewhere in the north pasture, a Jersey cow grazed contentedly, unaware of her role in bringing together two people who had found, against all odds, a love worth choosing.